Well, thank you for being here. When you think about learning, it's really quite extraordinary. How do we do that? And thinking about learning for change is even more extraordinary. It means learning that leads to me doing something differently than I did it before. Huh? And the interesting thing is that we all actually know how to do it. We all did this continuously. We fell down, we got up again. We fell down, we got up again. We learned how to walk, we learned how to talk, which is amazing. I mean, really amazing that we learned how to talk, to use language. So we all know how to do it, right? But then somehow we lose the trick. And no, you don't think so? Well, why is it so difficult to learn from experience? We often hear this. You know, I keep making the same mistake over and over. You know, I keep marrying the same man over and over. No, no, I didn't do that. I'm quite proud of that. We find it difficult to learn from experience. We use phrases like reinventing the wheel. Have you heard that one? It seems as though every project for sustainable development starts with reinventing 4 wheels at least. And I'm kind of tired of that. I don't want to reinvent wheels. I want to reuse them. So how do we do that? Well, I've been looking with some friends and some colleagues for some years now. One thing I've learned from them and from experience is that all learning really is about patterns. It's about recognizing patterns. And this is one explanation of why we're so good at it as small children, and then we kind of lose the ability. The first pattern we learn in all our lives, the first pattern every one of us learned, is almost certainly this one. It means one of us. This is the pattern that means one of us. And the next thing we learn is one of us that is mama. That's the next pattern we learn. But what happens then? At some point, the patterns kind of take over. We build up this whole library of patterns inside that help us to interpret reality, and then they start taking over and telling us what to hear, what to see, what to feel even. Have you ever found that people were laughing and you felt like crying? But you couldn't do that because you weren't supposed to cry in that situation. You knew that. That was the pattern. You were supposed to laugh. Huh? So the patterns begin to dictate to us. Instead of our really experiencing what we see, what we hear, there's this pattern in the way. We filter experience. So learning for change is not only, maybe even not principally, about learning new things. It's about unlearning old things. It's unlearning these patterns that have become outmoded, that are not what we need anymore. They were useful once, but they've outlived their usefulness. So the problems, they've become myths. And the problem with these myths is that even if they were true once, which is not necessarily the case, but they may have been, we've overgeneralized them. We have a nice example in Sweden, for example. In the 1970s, we had a great shortage of labor in Sweden. So there was a big program to encourage investment in technology that took away jobs. Makes perfect sense. The trouble is, we're still doing it. I mean, you know, there are people out there with no jobs, and we're paying companies to invest in technology that takes jobs away. Well, it may be sensible, but it may not. And you know, it's worth stopping and saying, is this myth still serving us? And the other problem with myths is that we take them for granted. They're like the air we breathe, invisible. So we don't even think about them. And that's the hardest thing to catch sight of, is the thing that you're not aware of, right? Like, will anybody who is not here please stand up? You know, it's that kind of situation. Some of us have been looking for these myths for some time to see if we can catch sight of them. You have to catch them out of the corner of your eye sometimes. One of them we found is this one. We'll get around to saving the environment when we've saved enough money. Now, at one level, this is obviously ridiculous. I mean, it's like saying, I know I'm sawing off the branch that I'm sitting on, but I can't stop quite yet. So obviously ridiculous. On the other hand, well, it's not very sustainable to go bankrupt. So what's happening here? What's going on? It seems as though we have a financial system that forces us to choose between going bankrupt now or killing human civilization later. And in those circumstances, it does seem to me that maybe we should be rethinking our financial systems, because it doesn't make sense to me. If we look at sustainable development again, and the projects that we start and run, and sometimes are quite proud of, and sometimes feel a bit disappointed that they don't get a bit further than they do, we often try, as we heard earlier, to persuade people to behave differently. Several people have mentioned that. We want people to behave differently, starting with ourselves, hopefully. And we try, and if it doesn't work, or it doesn't work enough, then we may fall into this myth. Yeah? You can't teach old dogs. Sorry, wrong one. Well, where have I gone? Excuse me, I have to look and see where I am. Yes, sorry, before that, yes, this is even better. This is a wonderful myth. Yeah, this is a wonderful myth. Money obeys laws like natural laws. Yeah? This actually has never been true. I say, you can go and check it. You can go and make up your own mind. I claim this has never been true. Money doesn't obey laws because money is a human invention. It obeys rules and regulations that we invent for it. Yeah? Now, the rules and regulations in force today were invented about 40 years ago, and they were agreed by a few people in a place called Bretton Woods. And probably the rest of us didn't really realize what we were agreeing to, because the rules and regulations today that govern money are consistently driving us away from sustainability. So if we really are serious about building a sustainable society, we need to remake the rules and regulations. Now, the good news is it's possible. Lots of people have started. We don't have to do it all at once in some huge global movement. We can start where we are, we can make small changes, and we can free ourselves, we can buffer ourselves from this stupid system that we designed 40 years ago. That's the good news. So, go back to the Sustainable Development Projects and our disappointment when people don't do what we want them to do, and we get into this situation where you can't teach old dogs new tricks. Now, this is another one that is a very interesting myth. It's clearly not true either. I mean, just think. When did you get a phone that you took photos with? I saw a child, small child, a couple of weeks ago, picking up a phone and saying, trying to take a photo with it, and it was a slightly older one, and she couldn't understand, why can't I take a photo with his phone? You know? So look at the advertising industry, look at the PR industry, look at the marketing industries. What are they doing all the time? They're teaching us new tricks. That's what they do, all the time, every day. So old dogs can learn new tricks. Very good. We can learn. We can learn from our own experience. We can learn from the experience of the PR and advertising and marketing industries also. Here's another myth that we found that I rather like. People are really not very nice. Mm-hmm. So this myth has been around since Darwin. This is Darwin, pure Darwin. And I think it's time that we punctured it, because it's a very small part of the truth. Yeah? It's true in some circumstances, yes, but mostly it's not. Well, science is teaching us that now. Finally, scientific reports are coming out year after year showing a quite different picture, showing people collaborating in collaborative mode, wanting to work together, building community, all that kind of thing, as very basic drives. We can also turn to opinion surveys. Country after country. I've seen opinion surveys from Norway, from Russia, from the USA, all over. This is not the picture you get of what we people are like. Or you can turn to yourself. I'm not going to ask you whether you're naturally selfish, greedy, and violent, because I know you aren't. At least, I know I'm not, so I'm sure you're not. But truly, my feeling is that building a sustainable society actually means building on the deeper, real nature of human beings. It's not about combating, fighting human nature. It's about bringing forth the things we really, really want. How about you? If you think about this question, what would I most like to have more of in my life? Just taste it. Take a deep breath. Consult your dreams, your feelings, your hopes. What would you most like to have more of in your life? Okay, own up. Who said iPad 2? No, what most people answer is something about time. It's about more time with my family, my friends, the quality of time, the quality of relationships. Yeah? So if you're a little bit typical, probably quite a few of you came up with something like that. Now, stopping to ask ourselves these questions like this: what's really important to me? What do I believe in? I think that's a very, very important route to locating these misleading myths, these patterns that bind us. I really think it is. The hardest thing to see is what we take for granted. To see the back of my head, I need not one mirror, but two. And I think that asking ourselves these questions is one way of creating a second mirror, so I can really see things in the round. This is something I learned from a man who walked into my life, and that of many other people in Sweden, including some here today, years ago when he was already a pensioner. His name was Warren Ziegler, and he taught deep listening. Not only listening to other people, which is very, very important, as we heard, but also listening to myself. Warren used to say something that I have found to be incredibly useful to me. He said, "We all know that we know more than we know we know." Got that? We all know that we know more than we know, yeah? So this listening to ourselves and to each other is a way of uncovering what it is we really know deep down. Taking the time to do that is actually a shortcut to understanding what we know. It's actually a key to learning for change. It's a journey, a hero's journey, if you like, with all the characteristics of a hero's journey, is to find out what it is we really, really know. Yeah? So some colleagues and I have spent about 6 years experimenting with this. We've been building on Warren's ideas and on other sources, including the wonderful work on a pattern language. And we've come up with methods to help each other to locate our misleading myths and to find ways to deal with them. And now we're teaching these methods all around the world. It's amazing. This picture is from South Africa. We had participants from all over Southern Africa, I think 13 countries, I can't remember. This is from India last month. We had participants from South Asia. We had participants from Bhutan who work with the definition of a national happiness index. Have you heard of that? A national happiness index. They use it instead of gross domestic product in Bhutan as a measure of how well they're doing. Oh, another myth. There we go. Gross domestic product is the only measure of wealth and progress. No, no, no. One myth I'd really like to share with you before my time is up is one that affects me very deeply personally, because justice is a big issue in my life, and it's this one. We collectively can afford for some people to be rich beyond the wildest dreams of kings, but can less and less afford to educate our children, heal the sick, or care for those in need. I find that absolutely grotesque. And if you agree, then let's do something about it. You might, of course, reply with another myth. I'm too small to do anything about it. No, you're not. You are powerful, probably far more powerful than you even imagine. Yeah? Together, we can bring about the societies of our dreams. We can write new stories for new times. Let's do it.